Okay, good morning everyone and welcome to our latest webinar in our series of cloud business themed live and online events. For those of you following the slides, that's me. My name is Helen Bassett and I specialise in accounting and finance advisory and outsourced compliance services for high growth and established businesses. I've worked at Smith & Williamson now for just over 17 years, and cloud accounting platforms and the security related to those has really become something now that I'm speaking to clients and contacts about on a daily basis. So today our usual disclaimer applies. We are obviously providing very generic information, so we're not recommending you make any business decisions based on that. But of course, you're more than welcome to follow up with me directly afterwards if you have any further questions. So today we have a 45-minute session together to cover 3 areas. I will start with a brief introduction to cloud accounting software and the key security concerns for businesses. Today I was due to be joined by Stuart Peck, but he has been called out by a customer for an emergency to fight some cybercrime. So the good news is that I am instead joined by his esteemed colleague Nick Prescott, who is the Director of Professional Services for Zero Day Labs. So welcome, Nick. Thank you for joining us today. So Nick has kindly agreed to provide his insight into tackling the cybersecurity challenge, and I shall be grilling him with some questions later on in the session. So talking of questions, you will be able to submit them at any time during the presentation using the question and answer box. And then we will round off the session today by answering those that have been submitted. So before we get started, we were going to start off with a quick poll. So it'd be good to know from those of you that have signed up today, what type of accounting software you are currently using. So hopefully you'll see a pop-up box on your system. And I'll just give you a minute or so just to choose the right answer. Fantastic, looks like everyone's getting on with the questions. Excellent, so we'll end that poll now and I can show you the results of that. So it looks like at the moment, most people who have joined the session today are using the traditional desktop accounting platform. I can see a few of you obviously taking that step towards cloud accounting platforms. So it's really good just to see where we all are. So really great. So I'll get started now then. And so for those of you who are using a traditional desktop software, when I began training as an accountant, I mean, all clients that I was working with were using desktop software, which means access to financial data stored on their internal networks. And in the last, I'd say 5 to 6 years, I've seen a large proportion of my clients particularly transitioning to the use of cloud accounting software. So what this means is they're paying a monthly subscription to use their accounting software. They're accessing the software through a website. And the data is stored in the cloud, and in fact by data centers that are owned by third-party providers. So the access to software functionality has also changed. We are now in a world where businesses are creating their own cloud ecosystems, and that's what you can see on the slide there. And they're making use of the best-in-breed software. So this involves choosing an accounting platform be at the center of your ecosystem, and then directly linking in additional applications through APIs in order to collate, process, and monitor the more complex part of your accounting process. So you'll see from the diagram that this covers all areas of finance, but also beyond. So this could be anything such as online payments or e-document storage, or customer relationship management as well. So there's a lot of choice available with online cloud accounting providers particularly, and this is in both the cloud platform itself and the hundreds of applications that can be linked in through these API links. So my team are advising clients daily about the options available and which ecosystem approach would fit best for their business and their needs. So the reason we're doing this is there's just so many benefits to using cloud accounting systems, and you'll see a lot of those listed there up on the slide today. But in my opinion, the three key ones are, number one, being able to respond to flexible working requirements of staff. So whether that's to retain key people in the business or to deal with unexpected things such as the recent issues we've had across in Bristol with the recent Beast of the East and the snow. My second key one is the automation efficiencies. So really being able to save time and resource with more accurate data. And then my third top reason is being agile to make strategic business decisions, which is based on real-time information. And this can really be a competitive advantage in this fast-paced time of technological change. But as well as there being benefits, there are always the security concerns. And I recommend looking at this from sort of two angles. So the first angle is things to remember and things that you can do within your own business to mitigate the risks. So remembering that cloud businesses are spending a much larger proportion of their turnover on security than you would have been internally as a business when you were using a desktop system. And so you're benefiting from that scale of security. Remembering training staff to use secure passwords and making sure they're changing them regularly is also a really easy step to take internally within your business. And then also setting up alerts that monitor logging activity into cloud software can also help to provide peace of mind about who has accessed your data. And then on the other side, I've added things you should look out for when choosing or selecting a cloud accounting provider. So initially you would look to check that the provider is ISO 27001 compliant. So this is an international standard published by the International Standardization Organization, and it describes how businesses should be managing information security within their business. You would also look to see if the provider has things such as disaster recovery plans, regular security audits, do they use multiple firewalls, and also down to things such as physical security at their data centers. So this is sort of neatly linking me on now to our guest speaker today. But before I introduce you to Nick, it'd be good just to have another quick poll. So it'd be good to know from sort of everyone on the call today, have you experienced cybercrime before? So I'll give everyone just a minute just to answer that question. Excellent. Looks like I see most people have voted now, so we'll just end that polling. Okay, so looking at the results, the key one is no one has really experienced them, but there have been some close calls. So hopefully now what Nick's going to share with us today will help you to prepare and make sure that those close calls don't turn into any sort of damage for your businesses. So I've included Nick's contact details on the slide, and you're welcome to follow up with him after the session today for any one-to-one advice. But thank you again, Nick, for joining me today. To start off, it'd be really good to hear a little bit of background about you, your experience in cybersecurity, and also your role at Zero Day Lab.
Yes, thank you very much for that, Helen, and good afternoon, everyone. Very interesting poll there. I thought as the first one, 50% saying there have been some close calls. That's quite an interesting statistic there. So thank you very much for that. So to give you some experience of who I am, I'm the Director of Professional Services here at Zero Day Lab. I run our cyber defense consultancy team, and I also head up what we call our Zero Day Response Service, which Stuart has been called away for an emergency incident. So he's our ransomware specialist, and he's dealing with a client that has been hit by some ransomware. I've been working for Zero Day Lab for 3 years, and we've dealt with all sorts of breaches, all different shapes and sizes. But one of the critical things is, in terms of preventing a cyber breach, is raising the cost of attack. So that's very much myself from an introductory point of view. If you do wish to email me, it's quite simple. It's mprescott@zerodaylab.com. I'm not a relation of a lady politician, so remember to keep it down to 1 T. And we're happy to carry on.
Fantastic. So next, so cybercrime. I mean, what is your interpretation of that, and what it kind of encompasses, really?
Yeah, so cybercrime is basically the unauthorized access of information, sometimes from an internal and an external source, to take data for profit or reputational gain. And one of the main things is that 94% of these breaches are basically down to simple things about passwords, simple things about having a low cost of attack. You get these phishing emails, people click on the wrong thing, opens up an email, all the IT departments not having the RDP access locked down, which is the remote desktop protocol. Or one of the big series of breaches that we had last year was basically not updating the patches. So server messaging block 1, for example, attributed to a lot of the WannaCry and the non-Petya breaches as well. We carry on with the slides. Another thing is data sent in error, basically not protecting the data in transit, having a man in the middle of the attack and things along those lines. And when you look at the bottom of the slide and you talk about 9 billion leaked credentials, if you go to a website called pwned.com, which is PWNED.com, you will see, you can just type in your email address and you can see whether your email has been compromised. So if you look at the hierarchy of hackers, troopers, they're kind of known as bedroom hackers or cyber snowflakes, or whatever. They're the guys who are wanting to make a name for themselves or get some money. They will talk to their people who are intermediaries on the deep dark web, and then they will get to know more professional hackers, software engineers and forgers, who are probably more professional. Believe it or not, you have project managers who basically work on behalf of the mastermind or the boss, who basically recruit individuals to kind of create the malware. And also in more kind of corrupt parts of the world, it's ex-law enforcement agents who, the good guys turn bad, they will give internal information on there as well. So I think we're on to the next question now.
Fantastic. So, I mean, Nick, technology is fast-paced, and we are continually seeing new disruptive technologies being developed. I mean, what have you found have been the changes in types of cybercrime that have developed alongside these changes in technology?
Yeah, I think what it is that when you look at the internet as a whole, and you look at it's the tip of the iceberg. Everything that you see is 4% of content. 96% of the internet is the stuff that you can't see. And basically, what it is, it's bad code versus good code. And what we're seeing a lot more sophistication of ransomware attacks, of malware attacks, of spear phishing, targeting executives, building up that information picture and things along those lines. So, I'm sure you've heard about Cambridge Analytica, Facebook, and all this kind of stuff. Basically, that's all because personal information is being harvested, and it's that harvesting of personal information that allows adverse parties to not only, in this case, create misinformation, but in the more the sharp end of the cyber criminal world, is that you're looking at downloads, you're looking at code, and then basically by stealing that sensitive information, they can kind of levy pounds, dollars, bitcoins, Ethereum, all those kind of cyber currencies as well. So if you kind of go on with the slide, so the whole idea is that many cyber criminals are out there to get money, but the more politically motivated ones are there to change reputations or shift public opinion. So it's a very broad sense of what the criminals looking to use. And so when you look at this slide and you look at the different tools out there, this might be a shock to some people, but you can spend $200 on the dark web and you can get a pretty good piece of malware. And you know, the best defense about this is making sure that your patches are up to date, you're using up to date software, and basically you're making sure that the cost of attack is as high as possible. So, you know, you can see here that, you know, $700 for a distributed denial of service attack. Basically, if you have an out of date system where you have your data centers kind of on site, your firewalls are updated, all it takes is $700 to potentially take down your business, and then potentially people like us coming to come and fix it. So when you're talking about things like cloud accounting software, when you put it in an Amazon or Azure infrastructure, they are spending millions and millions of dollars protecting that information as well. You can also see the credit and bank account details, just how little that costs as well. And then also, when you go down to the bottom of the slide, you're talking about personal information. You're talking about, this is very much in the United States, but Social Security and date of birth is as little as $3. If you're talking about the forthcoming General Data Protection Regulation, where you can be fined up to 4% of your global turnover, you know, that's a very, very asymmetric figure in terms of the cost of gaining that data versus the regulatory fine. And, you know, you're talking about $25 for 1 million compromised emails and passwords. So, you know, it just shows how inexpensive it is to gain this information. Then, you know, the hackers are a bit like consultants in the way they offer services. And, you know, it takes $100 to crack an email account. You're talking about, basically creating these types of figures to gain access or allow you to buy services that gain access to adverse parties. So an interesting one here is that when you talk about ransomware, you're saying it can cost $1 to put a piece of malware on a PC. It's really not very expensive at all. And then obviously, as you go to fake documents as well, that just shows how cheap it is out there as well. So move on to the next slide. So move on to the question now.
Excellent, thanks, Nick. So, I mean, what would you say are the biggest risks for a business in terms of cybersecurity?
So the biggest risks that are out there, obviously, the usual suspects. Obviously, this is a screenshot taken from the film. You're talking about malware. You're talking about insider theft. You're talking about data theft, reputational damage to third parties. The interesting thing about data theft is under the forthcoming UK Data Protection Bill that's going through its committee stage and will be law by the 25th of May this year. It will now be a criminal offence for an insider or an external person to take personal data. You've got disgruntled staff with insider attack, but probably 80% of the breaches that we see are malware through third parties or from external hackers. So one of the key things is making sure that your supply chain is kind of, they have the security controls in place to stop the malware getting through as well. So the biggest, by far, the biggest vector that we're seeing is malware and ransomware. We very often get called up and say, I've been hit with ransomware, and we go, take a picture with your mobile phone, send it to us on WhatsApp, and we're on it straight away, identifying the ransomware.
Excellent. So, I mean, Nick, in your experience, what can be the implications to a business of a cybersecurity breach?
Implications can be downtime, they can be a reputational breach, they can be loss of business. You're just simply not able to get a hold of your business information. But when you look at these big companies, you just think of Equifax, which was known in the community as Equihack. They lost $439 million. So not only you got loss of business, you're going to have regulatory fines, and you're going to have share price falling as well. So I think that's probably the next slide, the next picture that we've got on here. It's the cost of, reputational loss is very, very difficult to quantify. But also it's the case of People Network Effects is the company that had a big breach. And I think if we go on to the next slide, you actually see a picture of the share price. Here you go. Here you can see the share price absolutely being hammered. Another classic one, and I know it's slightly different. If you look at Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg has lost $6 billion because he didn't protect his personal data, and he's been called up in front of the Digital Commons Digital Culture Management Select Committee to do this. So, reputation-wise, it hits your share price. Loads of people are leaving Facebook because they can't protect personal data. That's on one angle of it. If you look at the Equifax, they had out-of-date systems and they're protecting personal data as well that got leaked. So, I think 5 years ago, reputational cost wasn't as big as it is now. It certainly is big news now. And as Warren Buffett says, it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. I think in the case of Facebook, it takes about 15 years to build that reputation, and it's probably taken about 5 minutes in a Channel 4 news report to destroy his reputation.
So, I mean, Nick, what ways would you kind of recommend a business to protect itself against all these kind of things you've brought to the forefront today?
Okay, I think the crucial thing is obviously the first part of this presentation was talking about cloud accounting software, and people are kind of slightly reticent in moving over to the cloud. What I'll say to that, having worked for a cloud hosting provider, is that a cloud hosting provider, they have not just your clients, but they have many other clients there as well for securities they protect. It's almost like keeping your cash under the bed. Yes, that's more secure and no one can get to it, but it denies you the integrity and availability of outside access. And the banks spend a lot more money, bigger percentages of IT budget in terms of protecting that data. So there are basic things to do: policy and procedure review, making sure that the IT department exactly knows what level that they should have in terms of security. Doing things like risk assessment, understanding, what most people say is, what's the maximum downtime with email? What's your maximum downtime with accounting software? And basically doing this discovery of where that data is. Obviously, penetration testing, doing ethical hacking, understanding exactly where the weaknesses are and kind of fixing them. Some of the classic things that we see are, when we do a penetration test, is that the local admin password is the same across all end user machines. That's a really simple fix. That's a very simple fix on the Active Directory kind of config side. Making sure that admins have two-factor authentication. Simple things like that really do reduce the threat of a cyber breach and raise that cost of attack. Supplier evaluation risk management, understanding, send out a questionnaire to your suppliers, ask them, do they have the same level of security control that you have, and are they enforcing them? And also making sure that the technical controls you have, going up to those the techies in the IT departments and making sure they have those systems in place. And one last thing is, attackers don't care about compliance. They're not worried about whether you've got PCI DSS or ISO 27001 certification, or how aligned you are to GDPR, the UK Data Protection Bill. They are simply scanning the internet. Anything connected to an IP address, it doesn't matter if you're big, it doesn't matter if they're small. They're looking to make money out of your business, and they do that by ransomware, by taking personal data, and they resell it. And the crucial thing to prevent a cyber attack is making sure, simple things like passwords, for example. Everyone goes on about 8 characters, one being a number, one being an alphanumeric character. And then if you think about it, if you're trying to crack a password, there are 26 combinations for each letter, there are 10 combinations for each number, and there are 13 combinations for an alphanumeric character. If you remember 4 words, like I like Ibiza, and you put that as a password, that's 26 times 26 times 26 times 26, and there's a lot more characters when you put that together. If you do it as an alphanumeric thing, the numbers are easier to crack, and the alphanumeric numbers are easier to crack as well. Really simple stuff like that. Basically, train staff not just in compliance. This is very much a cyber safety thing as well. I think one of the really interesting things, which is not immediately apparent, if you look at French, German, Italian, and Spanish, the word for safety is the same as security. And basically, safety is all about the inside looking out. Security is about the outside looking in. At the end of the day, it's about a change of culture. It's about not getting end users to click on that link. If someone if someone calls up asking for information, it's basically protect information in the same way you protect your business as well. And the key thing of the key change things that when you do move to the cloud, making sure that your passwords are strong, you use multi-factor authentication. That's all set up for Amazon, Azure, and everything along those lines. So it's a bit like an ID check. You know when you go to your bank, you always need your bank card. You always need 2 forms of authentication. It's a simple thing to really raise the cost of attack.
Well, thank you very much for that, Nick. I mean, I've got your details there up on the slide. So if anyone's, looking to contact you, then, anyone who's signed up is more than welcome to do so. I think you've really given us some eye-opening insights there into your kind of world of cyber crime fighting. We have had a few questions submitted. So we'll go with the first one, if you're happy to take a few questions. So the first one is, what is the most common type of cybercrime you've come across with your clients?
Ransomware, without a shadow of a doubt. Ransomware, it's basically someone's clicked on something, boom, the whole lot's gone, and they've all got blank screens. Yeah.
And is that particular to a certain industry, a certain type of business, or is it just, it's not specific, you've come across all different types of customers?
It doesn't matter what your business is, what industry you're in, what vertical you're in. It's all about maturity of security controls, how secure you are. It's all about strong passwords, it's all about up-to-date systems, and it's all about patches.
Someone else, anyone else is welcome to still submit questions using the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen, but we've got a couple of other ones for you. So it's in your kind of cybercrime career so far, what has been the worst case you've come across, and what was the monetary value cost to the business?
Well, that's a good question. The worst one was probably last year in the non-patcher attack that was basically started by the Ukrainian tax filing system called MEDOC, which was a Ukrainian government tax filing system, a bit like the HMRC. There was a global procurement company spaced across 120 countries, 14,000 users. The non-patcher malware started off as a sleeper malware in the Ukrainian office, and at a particular time and date, it activated. It took down 13,000 users in 8 minutes, and the only reason why we managed to stop the whole company losing all their information is that we disconnected the MPLS, and it stopped the backups being erased. That's pretty bad, I think.
That's pretty serious, yeah.
Yeah.
So is that
we were on the phone within 3 minutes. So?
Wow. I was going to say, is that of that scale? Do you come across that quite regularly?
No. That's definitely the worst of the worst. I mean, I've had cyber extortion cases with hedge funds where they targeted the CEO and their wife, and it started taking out members of the business, members of their family, unless they paid bitcoins. So that was pretty sophisticated, and yeah, that was CSI. That was CSI on Channel 5 stuff.
Wow. A couple of other questions for you, Nick. So one of the attendees has said they're kind of branching out more into use of social media for their business. And they just wondered whether that is a particularly weak point in terms of cybersecurity, and that they should be sort of concerned about as they start to use that a bit more on a day-to-day basis.
Well, it depends who they annoy. It depends what they say, really. I suppose if you're going to use social media accounts, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, all of them, they all have multi-factor authentication. If you're going to speak on behalf of the company, making sure that's locked down to a number of confirmed users, making sure they have multi-factor authentication so that none of the sessions can be spoofed. But as long as you don't say anything that annoys the hacker community, I'm sure you will be absolutely fine.
Okay, that's good to know. And one sort of final question we've had through, unless anyone else has got any others to sort of submit, is obviously we talked a lot today about sort of business security and, you know, obviously the cloud accounting side, but do you have any sort of recommendations for individuals in terms of their personal security when they're sort of sharing their own personal data in kind of websites or social media, and things that you could kind of recommend to people?
Yeah, the main thing is that when you go on the websites, all the browsers have little padlocks in the address bar, making sure that if you're giving over personal information, that you make sure you keep it as appropriate as possible. One of the things I do, for example, is I have two personal email addresses, one of which is a Hotmail for when I'm signing up for stuff, newsletters, signing up for online stuff, and then I have one for my email correspondence as well. And making sure that, you know, if you've got an iCloud or Google account, if you have two-factor authentication on there as well. One of the really good things is using Google Authenticator. That's pretty strong. Yeah, it's basically kind of common sense, really. You know, making sure that you know, when you sign up for stuff, it just be prudent. I mean, I'm probably one of the very few people on the planet that really like reading terms and conditions, but then again, it's my professional hobby. So just kind of be careful. It's kind of common sense, really. Next time you update iTunes, read the terms and conditions, and then you realise how much data they want from you.
And in terms, you just talked about sort of Google Authenticator. Is that quite an easy thing to sort of turn on? Is it just sort of setting?
Yeah, yeah, very easy to turn on. If you've got a Google account, just put Google Authenticator into Google, and it's a step-by-step guide. There are lots of videos and things like that. And what that does is that it uses the camera in your phone as a QR code, and then when you use it, you have a 6-digit number on top of your password that changes every 30 seconds. So if someone does get your username and password, they need to have that number, and if that number's only on your phone, they won't have access to it.
Okay. Really good tips, some that I'm going to take away myself this afternoon, actually. So thank you very much for that, Nick.
Cool.
So I think that's all of the questions. I appreciate everyone submitting those. So thank you really to everyone for joining the session today. I just wanted to round off by letting you know how my team at Smith & Williamson can kind of help you. So in terms of the cloud accounting kind of business support that we talked about at the beginning of the session, so we have our review process, we can help with selection, implementation of systems, training and ongoing support. We're kind of neutral in terms of which platforms we work with, so we really like to work with clients on a really bespoke way to kind of work out which system is best for them, so we're not particularly aligning with any individual system. Anyone who's on the call today is more than welcome to contact me for a free initial 1-hour consultation just to talk about switching to the cloud, what system you're using at the moment, and just give you a few ideas of ways to take that forward. So thank you very much again for everyone for attending, and thank you very much, Nick. Everyone should keep an eye out for our next webinar, which is going to be on artificial intelligence, so AI, and what you need to know. That'll be coming up in late spring. So finishing off with a disclaimer there. Once again, thank you everyone for joining. Thanks again, Nick. And yeah, any questions for Nick or anything you'd like to follow up, you've obviously got his details. Just to finish off today, we will follow up with all attendees with the slides, so you've got those for reference back as well. All right, good to see you all, and take care. Thanks.